I'm Janet Jones, author of Happiness Millionaire, Positive Images for a Rich and Powerful Life. And you are watching a walk and a talk for happiness seekers. With the rise in anxiety, stress and depression and the increase of antidepressant prescriptions year on year, I decided to impact this in a positive way, and I encourage people to focus on their happiness health on a daily basis rather than their mental health when the wheels have come off. Now, there are times in life that things happen and they make us feel sad, and that is perfectly normal. Then there are times in life that things happen and they can completely floor us. Now, I believe I'm speaking on behalf of all parents here, and one of those things would be the loss of your child. Well, today my guest is the very lovely Jane Bytheway, and she speaks openly and honestly about the loss of her son Matthew. Now, this conversation is both emotional and enlightening, so enjoy. We're here at Jane's house. This is Jane Bytheway, and she's blooming gorgeous. Jane,
hello.
Now, the weather's pretty grim, so could rain any moment. So we're going to just have a little walk up to the door of the house, then we're going to sit on the sofa. So, because this is just to make it the walk and the talk bit. So we're having a little talk, and Jane is absolutely amazing. You're going to truly love this interview.
Okay.
So here we are now, getting settled into Jane's conservatory, staying out of that bad weather. And very appropriately, sat in the happy place. Now, Jane, this programme is called A Walk and a Talk for Happiness Seekers. And you are a happiness seeker, am I right?
I would say that's probably true.
That's quite
yes.
true. And you have been seeking happiness by coming through a really challenging time in your life. And I know this is going to be an emotional one, but how many years ago was it that you lost Matthew?
It's 11 years.
So
11 years in June. Yes.
When your life took a major turn.
Swerved off into a completely different direction. Yes, it did.
And there are many, many people out there whose lives just one day get taken down a completely different path. And as a mother myself, and I know for all parents out there, it's the worst thing that you can think of, and that was when Matthew passed away.
Absolutely.
It's going to be an emotional
yes.
one.
Maybe we should have had tissues here.
Maybe we should have had tissues. Use my sleeve.
Yeah.
So, would you mind going back to that time? And I know you said that you'd speak openly about this.
Yes, I do.
Because truth helps others, so
it does, and actually it helps me too.
It helps you.
I'm firmly of the belief that each time I talk about it, there's another piece of healing that goes on, because it's reconnecting with the reality, which might sound a bit counterintuitive, but actually it's about being in a place of accepting something has happened and that I've found a way of living with it.
Yes, yeah.
If that makes any sense whatsoever.
Yeah, well, it does, doesn't it? Because you can't change what happens, but you can change how you view things as time goes on.
Yeah.
But that day when all that happened, was it Matthew was going in for his appendix?
Well, yes. He'd been in hospital. Let me backtrack a little bit. Yes. Okay, so he'd been to school on a Tuesday, just normal day, and I got a phone call to say, could I come and pick him up because he'd been sick? Right. And it seemed like an everyday normal kind of sickness bug. Although he was sick quite a lot. Right. But mostly my kids, like probably most people's, you have a day of that, and then you kind of right as rain after a good night's sleep.
Fine, yeah.
Yes. So that's what I was anticipating happening. And because he hadn't been very well, he actually came to bed with me that night, and we were up 6 more times in the night, even though there was nothing left in his stomach. So I realised he probably wasn't going to school the next day. It was just a more virulent whatever it was. But we went to the doctor, who checked him over, and the conclusion was, yes, it's probably a bug. And I have no problem with the medical care. That
Yes.
You know, it's not obvious sometimes when there is a problem with an appendix.
Right.
It's not that every case is somebody's doubled up and whipped off into hospital to take it out.
So nothing textbook kind of thing.
No.
It can come in different ways.
So, so we you know, she, right, you're doing all the right things, some fluids and rest and whatever. And so the following day, which was the Thursday then, it seemed like he was maybe getting a bit better because he did actually have something to eat that day. So I'm like, oh, great, you know, another good night's sleep, and probably he'll be back at school tomorrow. Having said that, he was still tender and, you know, definitely not chirpy, chatty little Matthew, but it looked like that was a sign going in the right direction. So Friday morning we wake up and he's still very tender and kind of, you know, moving slowly. So it was clear he wasn't going to school that day. And actually I was on a training course, so Mum said she would take him back to the doctor, which she did. And she rang me probably around lunchtime and said, because he's not better, and it's been going on a few days, and it's Friday, they've suggested that I take him down to the hospital. So that's what I'm going to do. And so then I came home from the training course, packed a bag on the understanding I was probably going to be in hospital with him that night, and went down and joined them. So he was under observation, a paediatric consultant, and you know, they came and looked at him and we talked, and again it still wasn't obvious what the problem was. But they said, well, he'll have a scan in the morning and, you know, we'll make a decision from there. So he had the scan. That even wasn't conclusive because your appendix is tiny in the context of your intestines. But at that point he said, look, you know, this has been going on for enough time now, we're going to need to open him up. So he had an operation that Saturday afternoon, and when they called me before I went to the recovery area, they said, yes, actually he had got a perforated appendix, and it had obviously been leaking into his gut area. My guess is probably from Tuesday, given the pain that he was in. I mean, at the time it seemed like some of that wincing and pain was because he'd retched on an empty stomach so much.
And it's
somewhere in there anyway, the thing had perforated, but not like a big burst, so agony and rupture and get into hospital. Precisely.
Sign,
There wasn't ever. It just seemed like a sickness bug all the way through all of that. So anyway, he comes out and he's got a stent in because they want to give him antibiotics to clean him up as much as possible. And they said, oh, you know, probably be in hospital for 5 or 6 days now while he's recovering. And so, you know, each day kind of took on a kind of pattern. I slept with him there overnight. Somebody, one of our friends, or Steve, my ex-husband, but somebody would come each day and spend a little chunk of the day with him. So I would go home just to touch base with what was happening at home, because I have another son who's older. And then I'd have a shower and freshen up and go back. We'd all go back, Mum, Dad, Liam and I, for visiting hours. And then they would leave me there, and, you know, so. And it felt like he was on this gradual trajectory towards getting better. It wasn't rapid, and then on the Wednesday morning, we were awake around 6ish, I suppose, and I popped off to the loo. When I came back, we held hands for a little while and then probably went back to sleep. And then when we woke up again, he needed a poo, and that is a really good sign. When you've had gut surgery, your intestines don't like being handled, so they tend to shut down and don't. They're not active. So he'd got a bag to, you know, he wasn't eating anything anyway. So this was like, oh, great. First sign that it's really moving forward. So they came and put a commode, or whatever you want to call it, and sat him on it, and that left just the two of us. And then while he was sitting there, he just sort of slumped suddenly, and I must have let out some kind of noise because the nurses were there immediately. And that's really the beginning of the end, because they got him back on his bed, and within seconds there was paediatric consultant, a registrar was there, and I don't know, 3 or 4 nurses attending to him. And he dipped in and out of consciousness, but whenever I said, he was more conscious than not, and whenever I said, Matthew, can you open your eyes, he did. and he said, you know, he felt too hot, or he wanted things off him, or cold. Clearly they were, what I remember about the conversation was they were looking to stabilise him, and a nurse was pumping fluid in because I think his blood was going to his vital organs, so they couldn't get very many readings, whatever it is that they were going to read to know what was wrong. But at no point while we were there did it feel like a life and death situation. It was we need to stabilise him, and it was shift change over time while this was going on. So I think the nurses that were looking after him, you know, there was a quick change, and then the registrar who was on duty that morning came, and he was directing everything that happened around Matthew's bed, and the paediatric intensive care consultant came through as well. So there were two consultants, the doctor who was directing 3 or 4 nurses doing things, and we were there around his bed with all this going on for probably 20 or 25 minutes, something like that. And I can hear conversation about, shall we take him to intensive care? And it being not, this is life and death, but this is that we've got everything we could need around there. So let's go there.
Yes. The right place,
and he would then, you know, he'd have everything that we would need around there. So the decision was, yes, let's do that. So we just took him on the bed that he was on. And in fact, just before we did that, the first point at which I felt like, God, this is really serious. I mean, I didn't think it wasn't, but if you imagine we're either side of his bed, there was a staff nurse where you are now, and she just looked at me and went, he will be all right, you know. And that was the first point at which the reality of, oh my God, he might not be. Really, I know tears welled up for me then, and that was the first time, because I was probably on adrenaline, wasn't I, all that time. So we take him around there, and when we're greeted by a nurse who said to me, would you like a cup of tea? We've, you know, got a parents' room just while we settle him in. And I felt like a wet rag at this point, and said yes, that would be really good. And basically I didn't see him alive again after that. They took him there, and somebody's fixing me a cup of tea, and within, I don't know, let's say 5 minutes, I think that nurse had gone off, and she came back and said, I'm really sorry, his heart stopped, and we're doing everything we can. Who can we call? So I needed her to get the phone number of the prison where Steve was working. For some reason I didn't have it in my phone, so she went off to do that. And I rang home, so I spoke to Dad and said, I need you to come. And that nurse came back, probably 15 minutes. And she said, I'm really sorry. They never got another electrical response from his heart. So she said, we've been trying for 20 minutes, which is longer than we normally would. And it's not working. And I was just like, so shocked. Nothing can prepare you for that, nothing. And so she took me through to be with Matthew.
But the last thing that you would be expecting to happen also.
It's funny because only the night or the day before, when I've been at home in that kind of cycle of, you know, come and attend to a few things and then go back to hospital, had I even looked up appendicitis on the internet. And then when I read it, I went, oh God, it can lead to death. Wow. That was the first time I'd really made that connection. But because he was recovering, you know, and he'd had his operation, obviously I didn't think,
and we treat that as something, you know, oh, they've got appendicitis. You know, I knew loads of kids when I was younger who had appendicitis. They went into hospital, they had their appendix out, and it was never seen as something that dangerous.
It's quite common, and the thing is, it is quite common. You're right. What I now know is it's the biggest cause of emergency surgery in children.
Really?
Yes. Right. Because it's one of those things that can flare up like that.
Yeah, and because there's no specific diagnosis, I suppose, that for Matthew, unfortunately, that took quite a while to diagnose that.
It did, and I'm sure well, that's got to be what was the problem, because that poison. That's
Just
why I
gone
think
too far.
his appendix was probably perforated, perhaps even from Tuesday,
Yes, yeah.
because it had been leaking
Yeah.
poison into his gut, basically, and
Okay.
you know, how awful,
Yeah.
awful.
Yeah.
And yet he wasn't. I mean, he wasn't giving signs of even, you know, he wasn't giving signs of being in absolute pain.
Okay.
But I mean, he was tender.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like I'm in absolute agony and
Yeah.
I can't handle this. He was very, well, coroner, because of course there has to be a what do you call it, an inquest when it's an unexplained death or sudden death. He described him as a little soldier.
Oh, bless him.
Like he felt maybe Matthew wasn't, you know, as vocal about perhaps the
Maybe
pain.
not.
But also I know somebody else who is a consultant. She's an oncologist actually, and she came to see me after he died and said that her experience was that in children they don't display signs of distress, bodily distress, and he wasn't, you see. He was 1 minute he was fine and the next minute he had that collapse. She said often children don't show it. It's like their body tries to hold off it, whatever it is, for as long as, and then when it happens,
Just
then
gone.
they do kind of have a big collapse, rather than, you know, his heart rate was, you know, because of it being a changeover of shift, somebody had not long before it actually happened had checked his heart rate and his oxygen levels and pulse and everything.
And they were happy
Everything was
with that.
normal. Everything was
Weird,
normal.
isn't it?
There was no sign that his body was in distress,
Yeah.
and yet
So the shock
it was,
for you
absolutely
was just like, well, off the scale.
It is, yeah, totally and utterly.
So what happened then? So you've been told that Matthew is no longer with you. Massive shock. How did you then start to come to terms with this? Some of these questions I feel are going to be really, you know, strange, because I'm not where you are.
Okay.
But how do you start that process?
Well, when something like that happens, when somebody dies, I think particularly when it's a shock, at the beginning, your brain, every waking moment, is totally and utterly absorbed by it. It's like being, I remember describing it as being a bit like being in a swamp. So from the moment I opened my eyes, you know, and came conscious again in the morning, till the moment of going to sleep, it's just all-consuming presence, it shows itself in so many different ways. So there's, I mean, I've read a little bit about grief and how it impacts the human mind since, and I definitely had that really strange thing of, they call it denial, where, and I never actively thought, well, no, I did probably, I would think he was going to walk into the room, you know, because about when I'd gone home, because his presence was still a presence in that house, and you have moments of almost feeling like the person could come in at any moment, and then at the moment you think that, you go, no, don't be ridiculous, that's not going to happen, or whatever you think, but you then tell yourself that can't happen. And that happens many times, many times in the early phase, and I can't remember how long that lasted. Even when I knew in the moment of having the thought, I could still have the thought. It's a very strange thing, but it is what happened.
Like you say, it's the denial, and that's probably protecting you,
I guess,
from it.
Because you can only handle so much.
You can.
And yeah, you have to take it on gradually.
Yes,
The thing that made, I think, the biggest difference is feeling totally and utterly surrounded by love. So I was already divorced, and my parents and I had bought a house together 3 years earlier, and so we and Liam were all together. And it's not just them, the whole community, you know, when a child dies, a child who's got a school community, he was in beavers and cubs and all the other things that you do, there's this morass of people who,
huge,
and of course it must whiz round the community very, very quickly. So the wave of love and support was amazing. People were coming around with cooked meals. Knowing how hard it would probably be. I mean, I struggle to eat, never mind cooking, as did all of us, you know, in terms of prepping stuff.
Yes.
Or people coming with flowers and cards, and I know, you know, people do feel helpless in that set of circumstances, and like, well, you know, yeah, I brought you flowers, but you know, it doesn't make him come. Of course, it doesn't make him come back. But it actually makes a positive difference that I find myself explaining again and again, which is, there's something about that sense of connection, that people are with you in your distress. You're not on your own. Even if I'm the only one who was Matthew's mum, all these other people cared too. And it made a huge difference. I remember turning to Mum in the early days and saying, I felt like I could touch that love and support. It felt like a cushion. Absolutely.
Wow.
I remember saying to her, I feel like I could touch that.
So you must have felt like you were wrapped in it.
Yeah. And I think it was a cushion that helped to ease the landing into the new reality.
Because there's a landing to come still.
Yeah, there is.
From that moment, you still have to land in your new reality. Yeah. And I remember we spoke a while ago about you know, whether you took antidepressants for this, and you didn't.
No. I did go to the doctor, mainly because I had a really strange sensation actually inside my head, which I think was a physical manifestation of grief. It just felt like my brain was, well, this, you see what I'm doing here? It was kind of like I could feel emotion inside there, and I was like, this has been going on for a few days. I can't remember how long. So I went to talk to the doctor. And you know, there was nothing to be explained really, other than it was probably what I suspected. No, I don't know why. I guess I didn't want to take antidepressants, and I don't think there's anything wrong with them. And in fact, other people around me did.
Yeah, everyone's unique in this.
Absolutely, but I think it was the loving support that enabled me to feel my way into and along with the grief. And of course I had Liam. He's 2 years older than Matthew. So Matthew was 9 and Liam was 11 when he died. So probably there was a piece of me knowing I needed to be strong for him and to support him. Not that taking antidepressants would have stopped me from doing that. I guess I was just of a mind, if I can do this without medication, I'm not a massive fan of medication, then that's what I'll do.
And it becomes part of your journey. You can't ever deny that didn't happen. This is a serious part of your journey.
Absolutely.
And there's only one way in your journey, and that's forward, because I know you. And it's funny because recently I saw on Facebook there was this piece of art, a beautiful piece of art, and it's a statue, and I believe it's on the lakes of Geneva Lake, and I forget who the artist is now, and it's of this person, so it's nondescript whether it's male or female, this person, and it just shows the outline of the person and a huge hole on the inside. And the idea is that it represents parents who have lost children.
Wow.
It's huge, isn't it?
Wow.
So many in that feed, there were so many parents who had lost children, but like 20, 30 years ago, who were still suffering. It was as though they were still in the day that their child had died. Now I know you've taken a lot of growth from this journey. You can't ever bring Matthew back, but would you say that you feel like you've got a hole inside, or how would you describe that?
Yeah, it's funny, on Friday actually I said there's a Matthew shaped hole in my heart. It's a space, and there always will be, and I can live with it. And I think one of the things that's helped me is, what I describe, Yeah, one of the things that's helped me is I attended, some months after he died, a day event for bereaved parents. There's an organisation in the UK called Care for the Family, and they run 4 events a year in different parts of the country. And it's for anybody. You can have lost a child yesterday, 20, 30, 40 years ago, it doesn't matter. The doors are open for you to attend that day if you want to. And it's run by 2 people who lost a son many years ago now, and they aim to group you with others who might have some proximity of circumstances, so perhaps the age of your child or how long ago or something. And at one point in the day there's something that really sticks with me. So Kath, the lady, she described to us her journey with grief, which was, and she used a series of vessels and a ball. So she had a ball that was about this big, like a tennis ball, and I think she started maybe with a thimble, and she said when you first lose your child or somebody, it's like that. If that was your world, this is the thing that dominates absolutely everything. And then gradually over time, as you're starting to find ways of working with it and living with it, I think she moved on to an egg cup, so she takes the ball to an egg cup. So there's a little bit more of you, and it's still dominant. And then she moved on to a glass, and a bit of the ball then went into the glass. So you're starting to integrate your new reality into your life. And so she moved through this story until she got to a point where she probably had a vase or a glass vase, and the ball went into the vase. So this thing never goes away. It goes with you for the rest of your life. And your life, hopefully, grows around it, and you grow around it. And I think that's what's happened and happening for me. That's what I believe is happening. So I certainly remember, like I talked about the swamp at the beginning, it is the dominant thing. And then you get to a point where maybe you have some moments in a day, some moments in a day where it's not the thing that's on your mind, just little glimpses of it. And then gradually those glimpses get a bit bigger and a bit bigger, and you start to see more of life again. Is the best way I can describe it.
Because you must feel like at the beginning thinking, I'll never laugh again.
And I used to say, I did definitely feel like that. And I'm an optimistic...
Would you say that you'd feel guilty at laughing again?
I did, I'm sure. And I think that's normal part of grief, that how dare I be happy? Am I allowed to be happy? Psychologically or in my head, knowing, of course, that's got to be true, that I'm allowed to be happy. But emotionally, a dissonance between those two things. And gradually, maybe part of that ball becoming integrated into life is it's about allowing all of it to be. I remember, I'm an optimistic kind of person. I know I'm lucky that I'm an optimist, because I'm sure that helps.
Yes, massively.
And I used to say I was lucky before Matthew died, and then I completely stopped saying, how can you possibly feel lucky when your son's died? I do say it again now.
Good.
And actually, the starting point of the journey back to
feeling
I'm still lucky is about, I think it was about 7 or 8 months after he died. I had taken up racquetball, which is like, I don't know if you know, it's like squash, but with a bigger ball and a bigger
thicker tennis, thicker racket,
because I was 40 something at the time. So I took that up, met a new smallish group of people, so it was a regular group of people. We'd meet on a Sunday morning, we had a coach and whatever. So I've been doing that for a few weeks or months with that group, and somebody one day, we were just chatting as we were getting changed afterwards, said, well, what made you take up racquetball then? And I felt like I knew them well enough at that point to say I was looking for something new to come into my life, something to bring a bit of structure to my week and some physical activity, and that it was on the back of the death of my son. So I'm describing this, and of course, do you mind me asking what happened? And I described briefly what I've told you. And there was one other person in that changing room, another lady, who was getting ready, and I noticed just quietly sat. She stopped getting ready and just sat. And when I finished describing what had happened to Matthew, she then said, I lost my son when he was 9. It wasn't his appendix. I lost my son when he was 9, and I could hardly leave the house for the next 2 years.
Wow.
And that, I think, was the moment, or certainly when I reflected on that, because I had not been housebound. I don't mean there weren't days when I went, oh, I've got to get out of bed, but I did every day.
You force, you have,
yeah, and sometimes there was some force, and sometimes there was, it was just, well, it's just what I do.
Yes, yeah.
But I realised, wow, that poor lady.
Yes.
Maybe she didn't have the same support network that I did. I don't know what was different for her. But she said, you know, I could hardly leave the house. And I then, of course, well, not of course, but I did find myself thinking, wow, I am lucky then, because I hadn't had that experience, and I wasn't having that experience. And I come back to, it's down to love. It's down to the support and those people around who.
I wonder if she had any more children as well, you know.
Yeah,
because it's very different, isn't it? When you have others, you have to show up for them.
Yeah.
And plus, knowing that they're grieving too, you're still, you know, Liam's mum.
Yes.
So there's an element where I suppose that you have to be braver in order to nurture the younger one.
You've got to find what you've got inside you, or at least you just find what you've got inside you.
And I guess it's amazing because in terrible circumstances, that's when we discover how strong we really are.
Yeah. And I always would have said I felt like a strong person, but I had no idea what was in there till
no idea what was
the biggest
tested.
test
Yes.
that I'd experienced.
Massive test. So now take me now on your journey to becoming a happiness seeker, and you know, I mean, you're an awesome woman, and I know that you've come a long, long way, and it's been an amazing journey, and will continue, you know.
Yeah.
So what started that happiness-seeking journey?
Well, actually, to be honest, I think it's been part of me for all my life. I don't mean seeking happiness for happiness' sake. I mean, I believe that we are meant to be happy. And the reason I believe that is, I believe that we're at our best, we have the most that we can give to others and to the world when we are in a happy place. We're more resourceful, we solve problems, we help other people, we're more creative, everything but everything. So why would it not be our natural state? And you know, if you think about babies, they're meant, I think they're born ready to be happy. And it's life's knocks and challenges that that you know, can take that away from some people, or the way they respond to what happens, then means that they see the world through a different lens. Now, as I say, I'm lucky that I've always seen the world through a positive lens. I've always had optimism. So, and then I guess my work has taken me into the field of personal development, and of course, I've always explored.
Which is growing to be happy,
people.
not growing to be miserable. So.
Absolutely, it is. It's about, you know, finding what lights you up in the world, how you can have more of that, how you resolve the things that do. Because you know, we all have stuff that brings us down.
We all have. What's the saying? We all have a cross to bear.
We do.
And it's how you carry the cross, isn't it, that makes the difference. You know, you can be proud to carry the cross and feel stronger, or you see the cross as a burden, and
it can weigh you down completely.
And it can wear you down, and if it wears you down, then it wears the people around you down.
Excuse
too.
me. Yes, it's contagious.
You know,
it is our energy, and how we show up. We can either be somebody who helps to light up life and the world for others, or we can bring it down. And I don't mean slap on a happy face. I absolutely don't mean that. I don't believe in that.
No.
I believe in feel the feelings that you're having, and I think that's what's helped me live with grief. Because when it's an ebb and a flow, and over time the ebb and the flow perhaps becomes a little easier. And when the sadness comes, I don't fight it off.
So you just then allow that.
Oh, it's that, and I let myself feel it. I mean,
it can pass through then, can't it?
Yes, it does.
Whereas if you
like
resist it, it's like you're trying to hold it back, then it's going to get bigger and bigger, and then it's going to hit you big time.
Yes, and it'll pop up at a point that's not convenient. You know, I've had conversations about this with a number of people where they're living with loss in some form, and they might talk to me about, I can't let this happen. I can't have it happening now. There are occasions, moments when I might go, actually, I don't want this right this minute. Let's imagine, I don't know, I'm going networking or I'm going to go speaking somewhere. If the grief feeling happened to come up in close proximity to that, I would do something to aim to shift it so that I could be in the energy I wanted to be in that circumstance, but I wouldn't ignore it. I'd allow it back in when the later. Because if you keep squashing it down, it doesn't go away. It goes within, and actually that time when something happens that might be a really small thing, but it's on top of everything else, you find yourself completely floored, and out it all comes, and you're completely at a loss, then it takes over.
You, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It is. Yeah. So I think I don't know how consciously I did this over time, but I did allow the feelings, and nowadays I realise that's what's healthy. I think I simply allowed it through the early period, because I think, again, because of the support that I had, and now I would say to anybody, just don't fight your feelings, because you'll always lose. Actually, in the end, you will always lose.
Yeah. It's like the weather. If you try and fight the weather, there's only one loser, and it's going to be because the weather's the weather. Absolutely. And so your emotions are your emotions, and it's like we've to let them come through. Yes.
And if you want to feel the happiness, all the other feelings. It can't be that we go, I'll police this. These ones are okay.
Yeah, I want these, but I don't want these.
And I have been that. I've tried. I want to hold on to this lovely feeling. Yeah. But I've come to realise, all of it is transient.
Yes.
And enjoy those lovely times when they're present. Yes. Be present, enjoy. Yeah. And when you are feeling sad, be present to it. Yes. And allow it to flow, and it flows through and away. Yeah.
And love yourself through it as well, isn't it? That's another key. There's a great quote in one of Brené Brown's books. I can't remember what, Daring Greatly, I think it is. And she says, you've got to feel the pain in order to feel the joy. When you numb the pain, you numb the joy. And I think there's massive truth in that, isn't there?
I think it's probably true. Yes.
I think it's.
I'd like true. It would be nice to be able to say, well, actually, no, you don't have to have the hard stuff in order to feel the other stuff. But I guess one counterbalances and highlights the other.
Yes. Yeah.
Really.
And if you try and numb one down, you are numbing the joy because you don't feel it to the same extent, do you? No. Because life is all of it. And none of us can escape that. Not if we want to truly live.
No.
If you want to just kind of sail your ship safely through life, I suppose you can do all of that. But
probably. But I suspect it pops out in the end somewhere.
Yes.
Or perhaps feelings of regret of not
living, not embracing it and fully living.
Not having all of it.
Because it's an awesome place, and life is a fantastic gift.
It is.
It is. It's truly amazing, and yes, it is filled with life. Okay, so we're back. Sorry about that. I had a little bit of a run out of the battery. It's very live and authentic. Don't want it any other way. So we were saying about, life has its ups and downs, and you can't really avoid those, and you wouldn't really want to. Well, maybe some you would want to, but there's a lot in it. So Jane, 3 things that you can leave my fellow happiness seekers with from this. We've covered so much. That was a great interview.
Thank you.
So what 3 things can you leave us with?
So the first one is definitely, if you're facing a challenge, look for your support network. If they don't know you're going through a challenge, make sure they do, because actually people love to help, and it gives them an opportunity. And I know the natural inclination when we're in trouble sometimes is to go within and go quiet and small. Actually, the opposite is what I think really helps. I certainly know that from my own circumstances.
Making yourself vulnerable, isn't it, to open up to the truth, really.
Yes, and allowing that. The second thing is then accepting that all feelings are valid, and good, even when they don't feel good, and therefore allowing it all, because that allows the tough feelings to pass with ease, and you can enjoy the good stuff when it's available. And actually the third one would be, which I haven't talked about in any of what we've just been saying, the other place is, I have found meditation has been a really big impact in my life, because I am naturally more outgoing than inward, and I have come to recognise in more recent years there's huge value in having some quiet and some space, which allows me to connect with what's important to me.
With yourself.
And when you've got that, it helps you to choose what you then go out and look for, or what you do in the world, in a sense.
It helps you become more present with yourself, doesn't it? Right. Yes. Other than, what often we do is keep ourselves really busy on this outside world, and we're avoiding ourselves in many ways.
Yes.
Whereas meditation allows you to do that.
It allows you to, absolutely look within and see what's there. And I've done the busy, and I don't do busy anymore.
No.
I don't. And actually I find I've got more time as a result. It may sound really weird, but I see the right things happen in the right time frame.
Yeah.
So actually it's a route to living with more ease.
Yes. Yeah.
And I like that too.
That's fantastic. Fantastic, Jane.
Thank
I love
you.
Love you. Oh, wonderful one.
Thank you so much.
I hope you enjoyed that interview and you got a lot from it. If you did, then do subscribe to my channel and share and tell all your friends, because you never know who is going to be inspired by the stories that we hear. And together, I believe we can make the world a happier place. So do go ahead, subscribe and join in the conversation. Add any comments in the comment section below. And if you would like to know any other ways that perhaps I can help you with increasing your level of happiness, then visit happinessmillionaire.com. Thank you for tuning in, and I will see you next time. Bye for now.